You're watching Movie Guide. I'm Cheryl Crisp. We're here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, on the movie set of Sight and Sound's first feature film, I Heard the Bells. Now, it's a true story about a life changed by God that changes the world.
Already enshrined as America's poet, his works have helped shape the national character. He is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
How can Henry Longfellow's poem from the past leap off the pages and speak to us here today in the present?
That's a great question. The poem, of course, became the Christmas Carol that I think most people are familiar with. But the poem is a Civil War era time frame, and the way that he weaves the journey of his own life into this poem, I think people can relate to. It is, hearing the Christmas bells. Christmas bells for all of us, I think, can mean something, even if it means hearing them within another song that you're hearing on the radio. But, you hear the bells, and what do they mean to you? The church, and they're familiar with the Christmas time period. But then also it goes through the cannons thundered in the South and what was happening during that time of war and trauma and stress. And then, of course, the poem brings you all the way back from that sorrow back to, but God is here. He is not dead, and he speaks to us. And hopefully the movie will speak to people as well.
Your character has so many different emotions going on in the movie. It's really incredible. Was there a particular part that was really challenging for you or that you really enjoyed?
Both. Because he has such a wide range, Henry loves life. He loves his family, and he is dedicated to his wife and his children. And I think he really just takes in the moment. He breathes life in and breathes out creativity on a daily basis. So having those times to shoot with the Christmas Eve service and the time with the children during the Children's Hour poem was just delightful. Those girls were just special to work with. They were just fantastic. And then on the flip side is the extreme depth of what Henry goes through, and this trauma and this sorrow and despair, which personally I've never experienced that level of trauma. But to go with Henry together through that journey was extremely challenging. And to do so on film, which is such a technical medium, meant that the focus that I had to give to Henry in that time was a lot. But it was a huge learning growth opportunity for me as well.
When you're playing a character like Henry, for you personally, does it make you dig deeper in your faith?
Oh, absolutely. It makes me dig deeper in all ways. When something that hard hits you, when you lose someone that you love, it's very easy to lose yourself in the process. And I think that's what I'm hoping people will understand and relate to. But for me, because I've not lost anyone in that way, I had to cross over with Henry in his journey and join him almost in the story that he went through in his life. And that meant going to that place of despair and living in that place for a long time through this film. But thankfully knowing that there's hope on the other side of that despair, and being able to look forward to the arc of the character as he comes back up to life again.
What do you hope people learn from this about Henry Longfellow? A lot of people might not even know much about him.
I hope that they see the humanity of him and the real honest struggle. He didn't know his faith very well. He leaned on his wife for his faith, and he just wanted to be happy. And I think it's something we all pursue very heavily, especially now in today's society. We all focus on happiness. That's what we want. So when happiness is stripped away from you, where does it leave you? If you've made that your end goal in life is just to be happy, that's not sustainable in this world full of trials. And so I want people to see him and go, wow, even this wealthy, famous person is struggling with the same trials that I'm experiencing in my own life. But I'm not alone. And I think people need to know that. They need to know they're not alone, and that there is hope on the other side of the tragedy, no matter how severe it is. And ultimately, what I want them to walk away with is that there is a God who loves them very much and will never walk away from them.
Rachel, this is your first feature film role. How exciting. And you play Fanny Longfellow. Tell us about your character.
Yes. Fanny Longfellow was such a dynamic woman. She was an artist. She was a literary genius in her own right. She had fierce convictions, but she also had big changes of heart. Most notably is the fact that for 7 years she held off Henry's marriage proposal until she finally did accept his marriage. But she was warm and she was humble, but she was a woman of spiritual strength as well.
What do you think women can learn from this role?
That's a great question. I'm going to say the word humility. I think what made Fanny so very beautiful and dynamic was that she was strong, confident, and aspirational. She knew who she was, but she was willing to lay those things aside. And she was a woman of great humility. She served her family and her husband. She sacrificed some of her own aspirations and served Henry in his literary pursuits, and in turn, he really honored her in many ways, professionally and intellectually, with his writings. And so I think that is what sets her apart for me, is the balance of those two things. I think a good heroine is someone who is strong and brave, but who is layered with a true humble heart.
This movie shows a great example of a Christian marriage
Yes.
between Fanny and Henry.
Yes.
What do you think women will get from this, or couples will learn from this?
Yes, beautiful question. I think that Henry and Fanny's story is so beautiful in that he pursued her and pursued her and pursued her for 7 long years. And she wrote in her diary about a salvific experience where she came to faith on Christmas Day. This really did happen, and we got to share her exact words about that moment in the film. She wrote about that experience, and that took place right before she finally accepted his hand in marriage. And so it's my belief, I don't know that this is true, I'm not a historian, and there's some things we'll never know, that spiritual shift that took place in her was the humbling that she needed, and what allowed her to come under his leadership and into a marriage with Henry. And in turn, he was obsessed with her. He was obsessed with her, and he honored her in so many ways in his writing. He considered her to be an intellectual equal. They were different, but they were intellectually two geniuses living in one household. And he loved that about her. That's why he loved her. And so in terms of seeing a healthy and beautiful, alive Christian marriage, I was so pleased that made it onto the film. I think in 2022, the family is under attack in many ways. And one of our best defenses against that is showing the truth. Showing naturally, not even making statements about it. There's not marriage statements made in I Heard the Bells or family statements made in I Heard the Bells, but just showing the goodness, the truth, the beauty of a solid Christian family and marriage that weathers storms together and celebrates together is beautiful. And it's true. It was said about the Longfellows in history that they were so happy. Their happiness was so complete and so famous that any change in their life would have to be for the worse. It was a bit of a foreboding statement actually made by Charles Sumner. But the happiness of their home became an American symbol in that time period.
What does it mean to you personally to be able to reach hearts and minds and lives for Christ? Because this movie will go out to millions of people.
Wow. What a high calling. I believe that God is the author of all life and all truth, all stories. And so when we tell stories, especially stories that are about him, and every story is about him in a way, but when we tell stories that are directly about him, we image him. And it's my hope that he's glorified with this project. And it's my hope that when people watch this film, if they are walking through a season of grief this Christmas, that as they watch Henry reclaim the truth of these words, peace on earth, goodwill to men, which are not his own, they're from Scripture. As you watch him reclaim the truth of those words, it's my hope that people will be inspired to do the same over their hearts.
This historical true story is about a life changed by God that changes the world.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
That is the calling of Sight and Sound Films, to tell the stories of figures and events from history that changed the world because Christ first changed them. We want to tell true stories, stories from our past, not necessarily Bible characters, although we may, but the focus that we have right now is on people who have been in more recent history. And whether they penned a poem like I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day that has impacted the world, or a more significant event, those are really the stories that we want to tell on screen.
This story is set in the mid-1800s,
Yep.
and Sight and Sound is known for their authenticity.
Yeah.
Tell me about the process of creating this film.
So one of the great things that was handed to us with doing this film is it's an Americana story, Civil War, 1860s, and here we are in Lancaster County, where we literally still have horse and buggy, traveling around here. So there's so much of this story that was in our own backyard. The story takes place in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and so it's the East Coast, and so the climate and the terrain and even the homes are very similar. And so we got really scrappy, and we started to just think, wow, we could use this house that I'm familiar with. We can use this museum that's close by. We all had antiques and props that we threw into the kitty, to make it work. And that was really exciting, was the collaborative nature of bringing this story together. And again, we started out experimental, short film. And so we really just brought everything of our own to this. When we decided as an executive team to make it a feature-length film, that's when we really got serious about collaborating with some outside people who can help us establish, more period-centric settings and whatnot. So, yeah, it was an evolution.
I Heard the Bells still rings true today.
Yeah.
What would you say is the heart of the story?
Oh, yeah. Well, by far, the heart of the story is that we're not looking to just give people hope, but we want to give them a new kind of hope. The kind of hope that comes out of tragedy and crisis. So many times in life, we think that when tragedy strikes, that our voice is then lost and our calling is compromised. But that's just not God's economy. It's because of the weathered storms. It's because of the dents and the scratches that we can actually ring out more loud and more deep. And that's really the heart of this story. It's a man who was at the pinnacle, top of his career. Tragedy strikes. He loses his voice as a poet and an influencer. And like a bell hanging in a bell tower, that voice is not ringing out more loud and deep. At that part in his life, it's the bottom of some rubble and it's dented and scratched. And he thinks, that's it. And but God's like, no. He's like, because you've been through the tough times, your voice can be heard even more loud and deep. And so I love the last verse of that poem and that song that we all know and love today. And it says it all, at that moment in Henry's life when he's redeemed and restored, he writes, then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. The place for Henry Longfellow to get to that place, after having penned an earlier verse, which is, and in despair I bowed my head, there is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. What was this man's journey from that despair to the bells pealing more loud and deep? That's the heart and story of I Heard the Bells.
What made Sight and Sound decide to go into film?
So Sight and Sound is on its 47th year of bringing the Bible to life on stage. And we always felt like there's going to be something more. And during COVID, March of 2020, when we shut our doors, and the Jesus production that was captured cinematically was given to the world during Easter weekend, we realized, wow, there's a hunger worldwide for this. So we thought, for 46 years, the world has been coming to us, but what if we go to them? And so with our stage productions, we've been doing that with Sight and Sound TV and live broadcasts and DVDs. And Easter 2020, we gave the world the Jesus production cinematically. And in 3 days, 3 million people watched that production. We were only expecting 1.5 million people to come and see a show in 2020 in 12 months. So in 3 days, 3 million people, or 12 months, 1.5 million people. And we kind of thought, you know what? Let's lean in to the media side of things. Let's try to create things that can get out into the world. And so that's really what kind of sparked the idea of original screenplays. We're going to continue to do live stage. We're going to continue to broadcast live events. But we were thinking, what if we also do jump into the cinema world, which we're not familiar with, but the thing we are familiar with is storytelling. And we want to see if we can make that leap. And I Heard the Bells is our first opportunity and shot at doing that.
Sight and Sound already reaches millions, but now this is an even bigger opportunity. What does that mean to you?
I think for us, the message of this film is about a voice that rings out for the world to hear. And the bell symbolizes that. And when we kind of really felt the Lord taking us towards this next step, it felt like that's what he was asking for this ministry, is for us to ring out even louder, even further than what we have in the past. And while we continue to be incredibly passionate about bringing Bible stories to life on stage, we're very excited about the opportunities for all of these other stories from history that have been waiting to be told. And so in many ways, it feels like a natural next step.
And a lot of people might not have ever heard of this story before.
Yeah, I didn't, if I'm being really honest. I knew the song. I love the song. It's one of my favorite Christmas carols. But I was not aware of the story behind how it came to be until we started diving into this film, and immediately just fell in love with the story. And I think there's so much about it that we all can identify with. We've all hit hard patches. We've all hit hard times. And I think sometimes, as people of faith, we don't always do a good job of being really real about how hard those hard times are. And so the story, is one that I really identify with, of hitting hard times and then recognizing that there's still a future ahead. There's still a voice to be shared. There's still stories to be told, and knowing that, God's faithfulness, even through the hard times, sometimes shines even brighter after them.
I love that Sight and Sound was founded on family and faith. And this story is coming out at Christmas time, the holiest time of the year, Jesus' birth. This is sort of like Sight and Sound's Christmas gift to the world.
I think, it feels like that. It feels special to us. I think it is a Christmas gift, yes, that we're giving out. But truthfully, I think for us, it feels like one that the Lord is giving to us in the midst of it. It's just been an incredible journey, and yes, hard. And there's been challenges, and producing a film is not an easy feat. But at the same time, it's been really fun, and the faithfulness of him through every single detail of this journey feels like a gift for us. His faithfulness is the thing that's shining really bright in this season.
Sight and Sound started with your grandparents in their garage, building sets, making costumes, having family and friends, aunts, uncles, and cousins involved. Fast forward to today, the movie, and a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles and family members are involved. What does that mean to you to sit back and watch the process of a movie being made?
Yeah, what I feel is just gratitude, and I think so much anticipation for what the Lord has next. We love to work hard. We are passionate about this ministry. We're passionate about what God has called us to, and doing it together, and being able to have, our life be a part of the work that we're called to, and being able to have my kids with us on different, the long days, and have them be with cousins and everything else. It's just making the whole experience feel so special. And and one that we hope continues for a long time to come.
You are a good man, Henry.
I heard the bells on Christmas Day.